What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Savvy, and welcome back to the Savvy Show. And in today's episode, this is going to be an SCP that we covered multiple times on the channel. This is SCP-610, Tale Aftermath. So SCP-610 is the flesh that hates, if you guys are not aware. I've already reacted to this SCP on the Rubbers channel, part 1 and 2. However, this one seems like it's the conclusion or like the aftermath. So let's see if it will overlap or it will follow through with some things that we might not know about this SCP, because it seems like a lot of you guys wanted me to check this out and it's time to dive deep. So with that being said, if you guys are excited for this reaction, please remember to stop by the like button and smash it for me real quick. And also remember to smash that sub button and then hit that bell so you can stay plugged for each and every upload. And now, without all out the way, without any further ado, let's get this show started. Alrighty, SCP-610, Tale Aftermath. So let's see what we're getting ourselves into.
It rides against the snow, red, raw, and vicious. Too many mouths, too many limbs, twitching and dripping. Once it looked a lot like you, but now it's something different entirely. If ever it escapes its bounds, it'll rebuild the whole world in its image. It is known and feared by everyone with sufficient clearance at the SCP Foundation. And for good reason. It'll infect anyone and anything, and a death sentence is preferable to infection.
Crazy SCP.
It is a disease that thinks. The crawling corruption. The flesh that hates.
Yep.
Or if you fear its true name too much to speak it and find comfort in the categorization and clinical eyes of the SCP Foundation.
Octopus and squids that don't have bones. What the heck?
SCP-610. SCP-610 is a contagious skin disease transmitted by direct contact. Anyone infected with it suffers a horrific mutation, turning them into fleshy, inhuman monstrosities. These infected creatures will attack and infect anyone nearby that isn't also carrying SCP-610.
I guess in this animation, it looks like they turn into some octopus creatures. Because they're kind of like alluding to, generally, they just turn to fleshy creatures. So they're not being specific about what kind of flesh creatures you're turning into. So I guess there's a plethora of options.
This also happens to be the flesh described and adored by those following the twisted religion of Sarkicism, a violent cult and group of interests that worships flesh, corruption, and disease.
Yep.
And as the Foundation operatives tasked with observing groups of interest...
That's basically the opposite faction of the Broken God, if you guys didn't know.
No. Sarkicism is a sect that directly opposes the machine-revering church of the Broken God.
There we go.
And to understand the events of the tale known to the SCP Foundation as Aftermath, the beginning that leads to its brutal and world-changing end, one must first understand the endless conflict between these two groups.
Alrighty.
The Church of the Broken God is a religion that the SCP Foundation has had a number of encounters with over the years. Members of the church share in the belief that biological, flesh-based life is an inherently wrong and evil abomination. They worship mechanization, the process of making organic bodies something more mechanical in nature. According to the beliefs of the church, two gods, Yaldabaoth and Mechane, created humanity together. Yaldabaoth was the god of flesh and animal instinct, granting humans bodies. Meanwhile, the god of machine and intellect, Mechane, blessed man with the power of free thought. As humankind developed machines, Yaldabaoth became enraged that they were ignorant of the instincts she had given them, and endeavored to destroy the creations of man. As the church's legend goes...
I mean, I don't really understand that logic. They're just making life a little bit easier for them. How would you want them to go about their life? Let's hear it. Like, would you want them to just walk to destination to destination? Or make flesh vehicles they could somehow operate? Or would you rather them just use horses? Who knows? Camels, maybe.
Mechane acted as humanity's savior, and tried desperately to stop Yaldabaoth. The god of machines shattered himself, transforming his body into a number of pieces to form a cage for his fellow god. Fragments of Mechane rained down on planet Earth. Now the Church of the Broken God believes it is their duty to recover these missing parts. There could potentially be hundreds of pieces needed to rebuild Mechane, and a number of these happen to be cataloged SCPs that the Foundation is either aware of or has in containment.
Well, wouldn't that not add up, though, because most of his parts is being used to contain his fellow god? So you can't get those parts, so you can't really, build him back up, unless you're going to use, like, supplementary parts to fill in the gaps.
Our story begins not with the long-awaited return of Mecane the Broken God. Instead, it begins with a man, a Foundation foot soldier named Roderick Freeman. This is the story of Aftermath. In 2003, at the age of 17, Roderick's ambition was to join the U.S. Navy and become a member of the renowned Navy SEALs. After enlisting and completing 3 years of rigorous training, he achieved his ambition, only to climb even further to heights he never could have foreseen. Special? In 2017, Roderick, now a SEAL, was recruited by the SCP Foundation after his skills and aptitude caught the attention of their embedded recruiters. He joined one of the Foundation's MTFs, or Mobile Task Forces, elite units that are often sent in to directly deal with anomalous threats. Specifically, Freeman became a member of MTF Nu 7, also known by the codename Hammer Down, the task force you call in when literally nothing else can do the job. To bring Hammer Down onto the scene for anything less than a potential XK is like swatting a housefly with a nuclear warhead.
Damn.
So Roderick, a gun-ho soldier boy, if there ever was one, would fit right in.
Oh, God.
But what does this mobile task force have to do with all that talk about the Church of the Broken God and the flesh that hates? Well, after an incident that broke out in the Irkutsk area in Russia, they were the ones responsible for cleaning up the mess left behind. According to Roderick's account, a robot the size of a small building was spotted in this area during December 2018. This 30-foot-tall robot had apparently come to wipe out a rapidly spreading disease. As you can probably guess, that disease was SCP-610.
Nice.
The flesh that hates.
They should have also brought out the Dragon Slayer alongside with this, mecha. That would have been kind of cool.
At first, the Global Occult Coalition had fired on the robot, launching a volley of ballistic missiles in an attempt to take it down.
Oh, God.
This move failed, the robot protecting itself so that not even a piece of shrapnel could hit it. It barely seemed fazed by the attack, and went about destroying remnants of SCP-610 as it found them. Any infected with the flesh were obliterated, and when its job was done, the robot simply left. Perhaps this wasn't quite the grandiose return for Mecane that the Church of the Broken God had envisioned for their deity, but it was nevertheless the long-awaited return they got. What had happened was that the SCP Foundation called a lifted veil scenario. The truth was now out. The world would soon be aware of the existence of anomalies. Afterwards, Freeman and the rest of Hammer Down recovered a series of tablets that had been left behind by Mecane. Each of them bore a simple, repeated phrase in a variety of language. Just the words,
first one was Russian.
I will return. A short time later, riots began to spark across the world. It was a disaster too big for even the Foundation to cover up. According to Roderick, multiple anomalous groups such as the Serpent's Hand and the Chaos Insurgency had gone public. In Mexico, the insurgency became involved in illegal businesses that gave the cartels an anomalous run for their ill-gotten money, while members of the Serpent's Hand used the air of tension to incite riots. In short, everything was a mess. And this eventually escalated to a full-scale civil war in Mexico in 2021. During the build-up to this, around 2019, there was unrest around the world, and mobile task forces like Hammer Down were being deployed to train alongside various public safety organizations, all in the hopes of getting the world prepared for the storm gathering all around them. The insurgency and the Hand had revealed the truth about anomalies to the world, and so the Foundation's MTFs were
She literally just passed out reading about anomalies? Man, that must be a Karen. Come on now.
Law enforcement, special forces, and the like, readying them to defend against the anomalous. In 2022, the Foundation finally decided to intervene in the situation down in Mexico, where the Chaos Insurgency and the Serpent's Hand had been causing disruption. Roderick Freeman was one of those sent to Juarez, coming face to face with former cartel members turned lackeys for the insurgency. The Chaos Insurgency had been fighting with the Foundation for decades and knew all their tactics.
Those guns look like P90s, to be honest. Those are pretty dope.
Combine that with the ferocity and brutality of a lifelong cartel member, and even the toughest soldier is in for a fight. As it turns out, the fight wasn't even the worst part for our dedicated little soldier. While attempting to transport a person of interest across the Texas-Mexico border, Roderick and his squad were ambushed by a sniper. During the attack, Freeman received a wound to his spine that left him paralyzed from the hip down.
Damn!
However, even though the Foundation didn't like to admit it, The Church of the Broken God was actually highly skilled in surgery. After all, they worshipped mechanization, and would often augment themselves using technology. Or, to use Roderick's own words, if you wanted an iPhone in your skull in 2009, they could have pulled it off. If you wanted to be able to turn the lights on and off in your home by blinking, they had an upgrade for that. If you lost the use of your legs because of a sniper on a rooftop in Juarez, they had you covered. Thanks to members of the church, there had been a new technological revolution since the lifting of the veil. By 2024,
that's only 1 year from now in this canon. Yeah, that's pretty dope.
Devices that felt like they were 20 years more advanced than technology should have been were now commonly available. So that's how Roderick Freeman was able to walk again. However, the SCP Foundation refused to let him return to duty.
Why does he look like that? Honestly, is that for like comedic relief? He literally looks cross-eyed or something. Like, what the heck?
Forcing him into an administrative role.
Dang.
Frustrated, he applied for a job as a containment specialist. Meanwhile, the state of the world was constantly changing, with the SCP Foundation handing over safe anomalies to world governments. New divisions and departments were being formed to deal with the containment of SCPs. There was even an anomaly registration program that allowed people to call 911 to report dangerous or life-threatening anomalies.
Oh, that's crazy.
Anyone exhibiting anomalous abilities could now find doctors or therapists rather than being carted off to a containment cell. In short, the Foundation's days were numbered. However, this was not as idyllic as it sounds. According to Roderick, this should have been a chance for the civil rights of anomalous people to be respected, something that the Serpent's Hand had been campaigning for since their modern inception. Instead, it meant that anyone with anomalous traits perceived to be dangerous was arrested as threats to national security. Things were nowhere near as restrictive as under the Foundation. The safer anomalies could even have visits from family. But there was one boy, Thomas, whom Roderick had to look after, remarking that he wasn't old enough to be kept in a containment setting. Little did Roderick know, the tests that were being run on Thomas were keeping tabs on him. Somehow, the boy was able to use anomalous abilities to watch where Roderick was at all times. The SCP Foundation was finally disbanded in 2027, with the containment of anomalies becoming the responsibility of the Global Coalition Council. This organization had long been the official sanctioned counterpart to the more off-the-books Foundation, despite their more violent methods.
Yeah, so if you guys forgot, they kill SCPs. They're not about containing. They're about killing them for the safety of humankind. So it's kind of different from the SCP Foundation. However, that's nuts. What's going to happen to all the SCPs that was actually beneficial to the Foundation? And in turn beneficial to the human race.
Now the GOC was making their work known to the public. But with the Foundation gone, Roderick was out of work, picking up odd jobs over the next 6 years. There was widespread criticism of the SCP Foundation and its dubious methods, the dark things they'd done to keep anomalies contained. Civilians killed, entire populations given memory-wiping drugs to forget about SCPs, the horrific treatment of D-Class personnel. A document containing details about these practices and more was leaked, causing an outcry. The SCP Foundation's brutal methods were declared to be crimes against humanity. Alongside this,
even though the whole purpose is to save humanity from these SCPs. Can't make this shit up.
Paranoia about anomalies was spreading. Governments were encouraging their citizens to report paranormal happenings, and people with anomalous traits were being registered and arrested.
Oh, yo, I thought they were going to get executed off rip. Yo. Okay, it's not as bad as I thought, because your neighbor snitched on you like that and you're just losing your life? Bro, you should be doing that in your garage or something. People are wilding.
In Roderick's account, he says, when people don't understand something, one of two things will happen. They will try to understand it so they can use it for their own ends. Or, and this is far more likely, they will grow afraid of it and try to destroy it.
Jeez.
So it was when humanity rediscovered anomalies. Former Foundation employees were declared public enemy number 1, with anomalous persons a close second. When former members of the Foundation began to find themselves on trial by the United Nations, the public began executing any ex-Foundation personnel they could find. At first, local police or even the National Guard would intervene. But some eventually started actively helping the vigilante mobs. There was nowhere for Roderick to hide. The FBI even used the Unusual Incidents Unit to track down the Foundation's remaining members. Some had even been hired by the UIU to bring in their former co-workers. And for anyone who knows how utterly useless the unusual incidents here are, to be brought in for execution by them is a truly humiliating death.
Oh, it's messed up.
Unsure who to trust, Roderick turned to Agent Leonard Wells, a man whose life he had once saved. Meeting at a diner in Wisconsin, Leonard agreed to smuggle Roderick to Russia for $5,000, getting him safely out of the FBI's jurisdiction.
Pretty good deal.
Freeman agreed, and was then led to an SUV with 3 other men that he didn't recognize. According to Leonard, they were just there to help smuggle Roderick. The 5 of them drove to an isolated stretch of road, only to stop.
Oh, yeah.
Something was terribly wrong.
Let's see.
Leonard told Roderick to exit the car, claiming that they would need to switch vehicles. As the SUV drove off, Leonard handed Roderick a flashlight and told him to signal a nearby grove of trees. And then, according to a report, Roderick X. Freeman was wanted by the U.S. government for the actions he was involved in during his time at the SCP Foundation. He was believed to have been responsible for human rights violations and was picked up by agents of the FBI's Unusual Incidents
set up.
The report claimed that Roderick engaged the UIU agents with a small firearm, although he had reached out to Agent Leonard Wells for help. Whether he was executed or tried to run away, Roderick Freeman was shot and killed. But that was far from the worst part about his death.
Dang, the person he saved betrayed him. Like, do you have no honor? Sheesh.
Dying is bad enough, but witnessing death, especially at a young age, is something that can have a long-lasting effect. Okay. But who was there to see what happened? Or rather, who could see without being there? Thomas, the young anomalous boy Roderick had been assigned to, had seen the whole thing. The world had changed undeniably. It has been said that the Foundation dies in the dark so that we can live in the light. But when the same light was turned on the Foundation itself, it seemed that they couldn't survive under its scrutiny either. Whether the world is better or worse without them is something only you can decide.
That's nuts. The people that you're legit trying to save turned on you. That's just like regular civilians turning on superheroes, you know? Like, we can save ourselves type shit. Like, yo, this is kind of crazy. But, yeah, this was an interesting tale of the flesh that hates, man. If you guys enjoyed this, please let me know in the comment section below what you guys thought about it. And also smash that like button for me. Let's try to get 60 likes on this one. And also smash the sub button and hit that bell so you can stay plugged for each and every upload. And unfortunately, that concludes today's episode. However, I'll catch you guys on the next one.